OJ killed everybody in that driveway. Forget all this. OJ killed both of those people. When OJ Simpson died in April 2024, you and I saw the NFL community split right down the middle. Some called him a murderer, others mourned a football god. But what one of his teammates admitted might be the most unsettling part of this entire story. Let us review what the sports world really said. Remember to subscribe. On April 11th, 2024, the Simpson family confirmed that O.J. Simpson had died from prostate cancer at age 76. Within hours, reactions poured in from every corner of the league, and they were anything but unified. Caitlyn Jenner, an Olympic gold medalist who knew Nicole Brown Simpson personally, posted just 2 words on social media: good riddance. No condolences, no reflection, just those 2 words and a hashtag. Jenner previously claimed on television that OJ had threatened Nicole, saying he would kill her and get away with it because of his fame. She was reportedly at Nicole's house 2 days before the murder and completely banned OJ's name in her home after the trial. And when he finally passed away, she had those 2 words ready. Fred Goldman, whose son Ron was killed alongside Nicole in June 1994, told the media that OJ's death was no great loss. He and his daughter Kim released a statement describing their complicated emotions, directly referring to OJ as Ron's killer. Their attorney added that the former running back died without penance. Christopher Darden, who prosecuted the 1995 trial, called OJ a great football player who was still a murderer. Steve Harvey was even more direct. Johnny Cochran, who was a friend of mine, he put the system on trial, right? Not OJ, right? He put the system. Yeah, OJ killed everybody in that driveway. Forget about all this. OJ killed both of those people. Yeah, that is that. He killed everybody over there. And when challenged, Harvey pointed straight to the physical evidence. They do not have a damn footprint or fingerprint. It is all in your ride, in your truck. Come on now. The other speaker made a telling observation about how entrenched people's positions have become. Okay, but here is the deal. I could give you information that would refute all of that. But why? I mean, I get it. If OJ came out of prison today and said, I did it, I killed those people like you would say, prison broke that man, I knew he did it. And people who believe he is innocent would say, prison broke that man. They brainwashed him to believe he did it. So you and I are not here to change beliefs. Hit like, because for every condemnation, another player took a different stance. Torrey Smith, the former wide receiver, pushed back against the media coverage. Regardless of your thoughts, he was acquitted in court and has kids. Le'Veon Bell praised OJ's skills, saying he knew how to run that ball. Todd Gurley called him Uncle O and his favorite running back. Other stars like Javon Holland, Eric Ebron, and Darius Slayton simply posted rest in peace messages. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wrote a pointed statement, saying every black celebrity represents their community, and OJ failed that heavy responsibility. Joe Namath, who worked alongside OJ in the Monday Night Football booth, was asked about him years earlier. What he did not say spoke louder than his actual words. Well, you know what? I still try to live by the rule that if you do not have something good to say, do not say it at all. He replied when asked about the mistreatment. Well, maybe I spoke of loyalty to a partner when you are together. And you know, that can be breached a bit, and it kind of drops your credentials. That drops it a bit. A married man chasing other women, credentials being dropped. Namath did not deny it. He just said they did not hang out. The host pushed further, asking if we could read between those lines. Had Namath witnessed a married Simpson hitting on women? Perhaps even in front of other couples? No, I was not around the women in his company. Right. Leave the women out because OJ is there. Namath's answer was highly telling. The NFL, the Bills, and USC all responded with near-total institutional silence. They knew any tribute risked condoning murder, while any condemnation risked convicting a man the legal system had acquitted. Joe Damier, the Hall of Fame offensive lineman who blocked for OJ in Buffalo, left us with. It is that agonizing middle ground where everyone who actually covered Simpson ends up. When a giant passes, our instinct is to mourn, to say it is a tragedy. But what really happened to him? Maybe he brought it on himself. But the man was an absolute American icon. To understand why this legacy is so deeply fractured, you and I have to look back at who O.J. Simpson was before that infamous Brentwood driveway changed the game. He was a man who transcended the gridiron. O.J. Simpson grew up in the rough housing projects of San Francisco, running with street gangs, battling rickets as a kid, and facing the grim reality that usually swallows people whole. With an absent father, his mother raised him while working as a hospital orderly. But on the gridiron, Simpson had a gear that made everyone else look like they were standing still. At USC, he became a national phenomenon, ultimately capturing the prestigious Heisman Trophy in 1968. The Buffalo Bills drafted him first overall in 1969. By 1973, he was the first player in NFL history to rush for over 2,000 yards in a single season. 2,003 yards in just 14 games, a record that stood for over a decade. Hall of Famer Tony Dungy, who played with Simpson in San Francisco, remembers the insane star power. They traded for OJ late in his career, but he was still the headline act. We had police escorts everywhere. There were security guards at the team hotel. I was in OJ's room playing cards with him and Al Cowlings, and a fan actually smashed the hotel window just trying to get OJ's autograph on a piece of paper. Dungy compares his legendary aura to today's ultimate star. He was Patrick Mahomes, Brett Favre, and Aaron Rodgers all wrapped into one superstar athlete. His influence transcended sports. That USC star power followed him straight to Hollywood. By the time I joined him, he was already a movie star. My first questions to him were all about Hollywood and what it was like working with Elizabeth Taylor. Dungy described how even the legendary Steel Curtain defense was completely terrified of him. He was the only player I ever saw shake that defense. During Buffalo Prep Week, the veterans would ride the rookies hard. They would tell us, "You cannot miss a single read. You must be locked in. If the defender spills the ball, you better be in position, because OJ will take it the distance." You had to master the details. And that was exactly how they prepared. That was the standard. He was the premier running back in the league, capable of scoring an 80-yard touchdown at any moment. Post-football, Simpson conquered Hollywood. Starring in films and iconic Hertz commercials, he did NBC commentary alongside Bob Costas. Hit that subscribe button as we analyze this incredible journey. I never gave it a second thought as a kid. But during my sophomore year in the pros, I suffered an injury that sidelined me for half the year. That was my wake-up call that it could all end instantly. If my career was suddenly finished, what was my next play going to be once the cheering stopped? That was when I actively started preparing for life after sports, knowing my time on the field was ultimately on a clock. I started producing television shows. He often spoke about how the intense discipline of pro sports prepared him for the business side of entertainment, how constant media interviews made him highly comfortable on camera, how locker room teamwork translated directly into acting and broadcasting. For Simpson, the athletic arena was the ultimate canvas to build those secondary skills. First, those post-game press conferences forced me to become highly comfortable under the bright lights. Second, when you interact with so many different personalities daily, you learn to read people and understand their attitudes. So when I read a movie script, I can easily connect a character to someone like my old teammate J.D. Hill, and you apply that to your performance. He described this philosophy with a self-awareness that, in hindsight, carries a chilling, unbearable irony. At the end of the day, I just really love making people smile more than anything else. That has always been my approach. Even with a serious message in my speeches, I keep it highly entertaining because nobody wants things to get too heavy. When asked about setting goals after his gridiron career ended, Simpson revealed how he measured success. Drop a like if you respect his drive. I truly believe that to succeed, you must always have a clear goal. If you are not actively gaining ground on that target, then you are definitely falling behind. Many of those milestones are deeply personal right now. They almost entirely revolve around my family and their security. And that does not just mean my immediate family, but also my close circle of trusted friends. You must have those targets. That is the only real metric to judge if you are gaining ground or falling behind in life. You cannot track your progress without a destination. Off the field, Simpson primarily moved in wealthy, predominantly white social circles. Welcome back. Simpson married Nicole Brown, living in Brentwood, while icons like Jim Brown and Muhammad Ali fought racism. But Simpson chose another path entirely. Dr. Harry Edwards, who tried recruiting him for activism at USC, summarized his attitude. "I am not black, I am OJ." He wanted to be America's guy, not just Black America's hero. And white corporate America absolutely embraced him. He became one of the first black athletes with true mainstream crossover stardom. But on June 12, 1994, that dream collapsed in the most violent way. Nothing but blood, evidence, and a white Bronco. Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman were found stabbed to death outside her condominium on Bundy Drive in Brentwood. Nicole's Akita, paws soaked in blood, led neighbors to the horrific scene shortly after midnight on June 13. Nicole's throat was slashed so deeply her carotid artery and jugular veins were severed. Goldman, a 25-year-old waiter returning forgotten glasses, had dozens of stab wounds, showing he fought desperately for his life. The timeline was incredibly tight, between roughly 10:15 and 10:40 p.m. Earlier that evening, Nicole, her kids, and friends attended a dance recital, followed by dinner where Goldman were. Nicole's mother forgot her glasses, and Goldman volunteered to return them, leaving around 9:45 p.m. Meanwhile, limo driver Alan Park arrived at Simpson's Rockingham estate around 10:25 p.m. for an airport run. Park buzzed the gate repeatedly with no response. Then, around 10:55, he saw a tall, dark figure slip inside. Simpson finally answered, claiming he overslept, and came out sweating heavily. Simpson then flew to Chicago for a scheduled Hertz corporate golf event. When detectives arrived at Rockingham early on June 13th, they spotted blood drops leading from his oddly parked white Bronco, up the driveway, and inside the house. Behind the guest house, Detective Mark Foreman found a single, blood-stained leather glove. It matched the glove from the Bundy scene. Both were rare Eris Isotoner extra-large gloves, sold at Bloomingdale's. Store records prove Nicole bought 2 pairs of that exact model in 1990. Subscribe for more updates. Simpson had a history of domestic abuse that prosecutors later used as the motive. In 1989, he pleaded no contest to spousal battery following a New Year's Day call. Photos showed Nicole's bruised, swollen face. A 911 call captured her sobbing that O.J. would beat her. In 1993, another 911 call caught Simpson raging while Nicole begged for police help. Friends and family painted a dark picture of extreme jealousy and control throughout their marriage and messy divorce. On June 17th, instead of surrendering as scheduled, the superstar vanished. His attorney, Robert Shapiro, announced he was gone. Then, Robert Kardashian read what sounded like a suicide note at a press conference, a rambling, emotional letter where Simpson denied having any involvement in the double murder, yet seemed to say goodbye. Then, the Bronco appeared, driven by his lifelong friend and NFL teammate. Cowings was driving slowly down the Los Angeles freeway, while Simpson sat in the back with a gun to his head. If this story grips you, hit like. 95 million watched as crowds lined overpasses, some cheering, others weeping. Former NBA star Charles Oakley remembered the chase interrupting Game 5 of the 1994 NBA Finals, calling it the strangest night in sports history. NBC split the screen, and fans abandoned the game entirely. By nightfall, Simpson was arrested at his home. Inside the Bronco was a passport, nearly $9,000 in cash, and a fake goatee and mustache, along with a loaded .357 Magnum. They painted a dark picture, a man preparing to run, end his life, or both. At his arraignment, Simpson firmly pleaded, absolutely, 100% not guilty. Years later, when asked point blank about the unsolved murders, his guarded response showed you and I how deep his walls were. Are you upset the killer of Ron and Nicole was never found? Right now, I am not discussing any of that. I think that's a pretty obvious question, but I'm not getting in there. I'm not going there. When pressed further, you don't think they're still out there? I'm not going there. The historic criminal trial officially opened on January 24, 1995. The prosecution, led by Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, presented DNA linking Simpson's blood to the scene, and the victim's blood to his Bronco and home. Matches ranged from 1 in 70 million to 1 in 21 billion. Blood trails physically linked all 3 crime scenes. We had footprint impressions matching rare Bruno Magli shoes in Simpson's size, bloody gloves, and gavel-to-gavel television coverage. More than 2,500 journalists crowded the courthouse. Around 150 million viewers watched the final play, but the prosecution ran straight into a brilliant defense strategy designed to exploit local history, putting the entire justice system on trial. Back in March 1991, 4 white LAPD officers were filmed beating black motorist Rodney King after a high-speed chase. That amateur video footage from a nearby balcony was broadcast nationwide, instantly sparking a massive national conversation about police brutality and institutionalized racism. In April 1992, a suburban Simi Valley jury acquitted the officers on almost every single criminal charge. Those shock acquittals immediately triggered the historic LA riots. 5 chaotic days of arson, looting, and violence left over 60 dead, thousands injured, and caused $1 billion in damage concentrated in South Central Los Angeles. National Guard troops deployed, strict curfews fell, and the LAPD lost all credibility with black citizens. An official commission soon exposed rampant excessive force, racism, and an intense code of silence in the department. The murders happened just 2 years later, while those community wounds were still incredibly raw and festering. O.J.'s defensive lineup, featuring Johnny Cochran, Robert Shapiro, Lee Bailey and Alan Dershowitz, along with Barry Scheck, saw this matchup clearly. Their game plan was simple: put the LAPD on trial instead of the player. They forced the jury to question not whether the athlete did it, but if a corrupt, prejudiced police department could ever be trusted with handling physical evidence. They shifted the match from a double murder to a referendum on systemic injustice, and the police handed the defense exactly the playbook they needed. Detective Mark Furman, who claimed to find the infamous bloody glove, swore under oath he had not used racial slurs in 10 years. But the defense team dropped a bombshell tape exposing Foreman using that slur at least 41 times, bragging about brutally beating defenseless suspects, and calling evidence planting and fake reports standard team practice. While these tapes never mentioned the actual murders, they exposed an officer who was deeply bigoted, violent, and utterly contemptuous of the justice system he represented. Called back to testify, Foreman took the fifth, refusing to deny that he had planted evidence in this specific investigation. Let's pause on that. The key witness who found the most crucial proof refused to say he had not fabricated it. He was later convicted of perjury after pleading no contest, becoming the only individual convicted in this entire saga. Next, Barry Scheck launched a highly technical attack on the DNA evidence, accepting the core science but proving that the actual handling was a total disaster. A lab technician admitted he opened the suspect's reference blood vial right next to key evidence. The staff failed to even swap gloves between processing different samples. Blood samples were stored in plastic bags instead of paper, trapping heat and moisture to ruin the genetic code. Crucial evidence sat baking in a hot police vehicle for hours. The defense claimed every sample was contaminated, suggesting the real killer's genetic profile was destroyed while Simpson's was accidentally transferred by sloppy paperwork. The prosecution fought back with lab results showing no signs of the chemical preservative EDTA, which is typically mixed into reference vials, thus challenging the theory of planted blood. This heavily damaged the defense's claims of a police conspiracy. If you look closely, a defense expert later admitted there was no direct proof of contamination, but by then, the strategic damage to the prosecution was totally permanent. This specific jury, made up of 9 black, 2 white, and 1 Hispanic member, came from communities devastated by decades of systemic police misconduct. Juror Carrie Bess openly admitted that nearly 90% of them voted to acquit as direct payback for Rodney King, making the decision a direct protest against the system rather than an objective analysis of the physical evidence. Then came the key play. Simpson tried on the bloody gloves, and they looked way too tight. The state argued the leather shrank from moisture, but that image was instantly burned into over 100 million minds. Cochran delivered the defining line of the trial: "If it does not fit, you must acquit." On October 3rd, 1995, following less than 4 hours of deliberation for an 8-month trial with massive evidence, the jury returned not guilty on both counts. Don't forget to subscribe for more sports history updates. Today, you and I are looking back at the verdict that divided a nation. 12 jurors echoed Simpson's arraignment plea, absolutely 100% not guilty. Legal analysts argued it was virtually impossible to methodically review the evidence in that short window, and the country erupted. That is the price of being OJ. Make sure to subscribe as we break down how this verdict split the nation in two. Black communities nationwide erupted in spontaneous celebration. Meanwhile, college campuses, corporate offices, and living rooms fell into a stunned, grief-stricken silence. Prosecutor Marcia Clark wept for Ron and Nicole, while Fred Goldman declared the country lost that day. Nicole's sister, Denise Brown, still remembers hearing Kim Goldman scream as that verdict was read. But this deep division went far beyond OJ. For many Black Americans who watched Rodney King's attackers walk free, this acquittal felt like a broken system briefly tipping the other way. For many white Americans, it looked like a wealthy celebrity getting away with murder. One defense lawyer captured that fundamental tension, and I understand why anyone watching snippets of that 9-month trial would believe this man killed 2 people. But I will go to my grave believing 2 things. First, that the prosecution completely failed to prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And second, that the LAPD or someone else tampered with evidence to frame a guy they believed was guilty. In 1997, the families took Simpson to civil court, where the burden of proof was much lower. A predominantly white Santa Monica jury quickly found Simpson liable, ordering him to pay $33.5 million in damages. This time, Simpson was forced to take the stand. This time, there was no Mark Furman to blame. The very same evidence, stripped of those heavy racial dynamics and judged by a different legal standard, produced a completely different outcome. Simpson retreated to Florida, using local laws to shield his wealth. He mostly played golf. He lived comfortably while the Goldmans chased him for 3 decades. recovering only a tiny fraction of that money. Then in 2006, Simpson wrote a hypothetical book about how he would have pulled off the crimes. Observers widely saw it as a thinly veiled confession hiding behind legal tricks. The public outrage was immediate. The Goldmans sued for the rights and published it anyway, retitling it Confessions of the Killer. They shrank the word "if" so tiny that the cover literally read, "I did it." In 2008, Simpson was convicted of armed robbery and kidnapping after storming a Las Vegas hotel room with armed associates to take back his stolen memorabilia. Sentenced up to 33 years, he served 9 before his release in 2017. In 2024, cancer took him at 76. He was quietly cremated with no public memorial. By late 2025, his estate accepted a $58 million claim from the Goldmans, the original debt plus decades of interest, but the estate was only worth around $2 million. True accountability, as the family said, never actually arrived. Jay-Z later used Simpson as a cautionary tale on his album, 444, highlighting OJ's famous quote, "I am not black, I am OJ." Simpson spent his entire athletic career trying to transcend race. The rapper's point was simple: you cannot outrun your identity, no matter the fame. The animated video, styled after old-school cartoons, crushed Simpson's life philosophy in a single stroke. Rolling Stone ended up naming it the year's best video. But let us ask ourselves, did NFL legends actually reveal why OJ deserved this fate? The people closest to this story, the legal teams who prosecuted him, and the families who suffered ultimate loss, they all paint a picture of a legendary athlete who spent his life outrunning the consequences of his actions. He outran poverty in the projects. He outran his race by becoming a brand rather than a man. He beat the criminal charge by putting the system on trial. He evaded that $33 million civil judgment by hiding out in Florida. He outran prison, getting paroled after 9 years. But he could not outrun cancer, and he absolutely could not outrun the final verdict of history. Not from a judge, but from the court of public opinion that watched this tragic 30-year saga unfold. Hall of Fame lineman Joe DeLamielleure, who blocked for Simpson in Buffalo, reacted to his death by saying, "I am sad because when people die, you go, oh God. That is terrible. What happened to him?" And maybe he brought it upon himself, but he was an icon in this nation. He was a groundbreaker. Maybe he brought it upon himself. 6 telling words from a teammate who stood in the trenches with him. 6 words that pack a heavier punch than any court verdict. Thanks for tuning in. Tap the screen to subscribe and catch our next deep dive on Gridiron Legends.